Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. By trade, I was a teacher. I haven't taught for many years, but I did hand out basically a pretest. Raise your hand if you still need one of these. Go ahead and take 1 minute to answer those questions. I don't think you've probably had time. I'll give you 1 minute to answer those questions, and then I'll get started with my talk. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So today I'd like to just summarize my personal experience at the National Eucharistic Congress, give you a bit of history of the congresses. My husband and I had the privilege of going this last summer. To be honest with you, we both really didn't know what we were getting into. I had really never heard of a Eucharistic Congress before. I'm hearing some music. Are we supposed to be hearing music? Do you hear that music, Jim?
It might be on the computer, so maybe just you hear music. Yeah.
It's good, but not the time. And maybe if you can't hear it, it's no big deal. But so, like I said, I had never heard of a Eucharistic Congress, and I'm assuming many of you haven't either. And we'll get to why I think that is in a little bit. So I'd like to take a minute and just kind of talk about the history. So your first question, when was the first Eucharistic Congress? Does anybody want to share their guess? Or their, excuse me?
The Last Supper.
The Last Supper? No. That's funny, practically. So the first Eucharistic Congress took place in Lille, France. And when did it take place? Any ideas? Say it again. 1871. You got it. Actually, Deacon, I have 1881 written down, but I could be wrong. Yeah. 1881. And who thought of it? A priest, a pope, a laywoman, or a layman? A laywoman, yes. Which I happen to listen to Catholic radio on XM quite often, and I happened to catch that segment on Katie McGrady's show last year, and I was really pleased and, to be quite honest, shocked to hear a laywoman thought of that back in 1881. And for me as a laywoman, it was inspirational personally. And why did she do that? It was in response to the decline of the Catholic Church in France following the French Revolution. And so after that, Pope Leo XIII started the Pontifical Committee for the International Eucharistic Congress in 1879. And fortunately, as a result, we've had many international and national congresses up until today. So how many national Eucharistic Congresses have there been? 8, I heard? Okay, you're close. So this last summer was our 10th National Eucharistic Congress in Indianapolis. And when was the first one in our country? What? 1895. Yes, 1895. And where do you think it was? Deacon, you're my favorite pet, but you can't be. Anybody else got? He knows his stuff. He was there. Oh boy. Oh, that's funny. Okay. It was 1895 in Washington, D.C. And when was the last one before this wonderful one we had last summer in Indianapolis? 1963 is the guess. You're close. Even longer. It was 1941. It's been over 80 years since we had a National Eucharistic Congress. Hence, that's why I don't know much about it, right? Because I'm not quite 82 yet. So it's been since World War II. And that was at what city? St. Paul. Yeah, St. Paul. So what is a Eucharistic Congress? As I experienced it and have read up on it, and it's a gathering of clergy, religious, and laity to bear witness to the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, typically in large open-air spaces where they have masses and adoration, etc. And in 1976, the U.S. hosted an International Eucharistic Congress in 1976 in Philadelphia. And some big-name Catholics were there. St. Teresa of Calcutta, Pope St. John Paul II, and Venerable Fulton Sheen, just to name a few. Now just think of the fruits that Congress has bared in all of us, to be quite honest. So why did it take so long for us to have a Eucharistic Congress over 80 years? This is partly my opinion, I'll be honest, but I know a few years back in 2019, the Pew Research Center surveyed practicing Catholics, and those results were quite negative, to be honest, and that's an understatement. According to the Pew Research Survey in 2019, it said that only a third of practicing Catholics believe in the real presence. Some Catholic studies and leaders in our church kind of dispute those stats for various reasons, but regardless, it was very impactful and it influenced our bishops to take action. And another reason I think that we had this Eucharistic Congress and we needed it was, as many of you know, the fastest growing segment of the population or religious population are the nuns, the N-O-N-E-S, the nuns. 28% of U.S. adults identify as a non-religion, like with nothing, with no religion, according to Pew Research in January 2024. So now let me tell you about my experience. Like I said, my husband and I went there. We flew there, so we avoided the long bus ride, which was nice. Many people from Bismarck went, and I'll touch on that in a minute. It was, well, let's talk about that right now. How many people do you think attended that Eucharistic Congress in Indianapolis? 60,000. 83,000? Wow, I wish. Those are all wonderful. 50,000, which still was wonderful, but hopefully in the future we'll get up to 83,000 or more. How many priests? According to my research, there were 1,170 priests that attended that. There were 1,200 religious brothers and sisters, and 630 deacons, 610 seminarians, and 200 bishops. To put it mildly, it was pretty amazing to see all those religious there and worshiping and praising the Eucharist and partaking in all the wonderful events. So in Bismarck, how many attended? 3 busloads. I think you're about right. 3 or 4, right? By the way, raise your hand if you're one of the people who attended. Oh, great. So you guys feel free to answer some questions afterwards too, or interrupt and give me some of your feedback. There were 231 people from Bismarck, Mandan, who attended. I got these stats from Ed Kanichka, who's out at University of Mary. He said 116 came from the University of Mary. 78 were students, 35 were faculty and family. There were 6 priests, 3 deacons, and 9 religious. So well attended. I can say that the University of Mary was one of the biggest groups there, and it made me proud. So what was the main purpose or focus of this particular Congress? Well, to revive and renew the church's relationship with the Eucharist, of course, and to strengthen our faith and love for the Eucharist and prepare us for a nationwide year of mission. Bishop Andrew Cousins, out of Crookston Diocese, he's the chairman of the board of the National Eucharistic Congress. He kind of spearheaded this thing. In his words, he said, "We are here to worship and adore the Eucharistic Lord, allowing him to transform our lives and sharing deeply in communion of his church through this time together. The fire in your heart is set ablaze and lead us to live more deeply Eucharistic lives and become his Eucharistic missionaries to our broken world." You probably all know this. This Congress took place after a 2-year revival in our country. And many of you, I'm sure, heard the wonderful talks at our local parishes on the Eucharist preceding the Congress. One example was that Eucharistic Miracles exhibit by Blessed Carlo Acutis that was at various parishes. I know Spirit of Life and Corpus Christi, and there's many other things that took place throughout the country for 2 years, getting us all revved up for this Congress. And one thing that I really didn't hear about around here, but again, I kind of caught it on Catholic XM radio, was the perpetual pilgrimage that was taking place about 2 months. I think they kicked it off prior to the Congress. So they had people come from all 4 corners of the country and process through cities and towns and prisons and all sorts of things, carrying Jesus with them. They traveled 60 days, 6,500 miles, 250,000 participants. They distributed 1,000 hosts, and they started in Lake Itasca, Minnesota, at the headwaters of the Mississippi. And the different routes, like I said, from the north, south, east, and west. So we had the Marion route, where from the east, the Elizabeth Ann Seton route in Connecticut. Started in Connecticut. In the south was the St. Juan Diego route in Texas. And in the west, our very own St. Junipero Serra route from California. And for me personally, that was a huge, huge highlight, because the start of the Eucharistic Congress was all of these people entering into the Lucas Oilfields NFL football stadium, carrying Jesus with them, along with 1,600 priests, seminarians, bishops, and cardinals. And it took 25 minutes for them to enter. And it's hard to put into words, to be quite honest. It was just profound and beautiful. And someone, I'm not sure who quoted this, but I totally agree. Excuse me. I'll try to shorten this up here. I agree that it was as if the whole church was in procession toward heaven. Throughout the Congress, there was daily themes. One of them the first day was from the 4 corners. The second day, the greatest love story. The third day, into Gethsemane. And the fourth day, this is my body. And the last day, to the ends of the earth. My husband and I chose to attend everything we possibly could. And we literally would start at 8 a.m. with Mass in the NFL stadium, along with like 50,000 people, and then continue on with all the other options they had, whether it be breakout sessions. They had tremendous keynote speakers. Some of the biggest named ones were Bishop Robert Barron, Archbishop Timothy Dolan, Dr. Scott Hahn, Dr. Edward Shree, Father Mike Schmitz. The list goes on and on. Some really wonderful religious sisters, Sister Mary Grace, And then our very own Monsignor James Shea did speak there, and he was a hit for sure. And if you can look these up, if you haven't seen them yet, I highly encourage you to tune in and check out their talks on YouTube, I'm assuming. Very, very fruitful. We also had Jesus Christ himself appear, Jonathan Rumi from The Chosen. That was a highlight. And we also had our very own servant of God, Michelle Dupong's parents spoke. So it was amazing. Also, you could attend confession, various languages. They had a healing service. Maybe some of you have seen in the Dakota Catholic Action this month, our local parishioner from St. Anthony, Jonathan Morall, his kids go to St. Mary's High School. There's an article about him and his healing experience while attending the Congress. I think in particular is adoration. So if you haven't read it, you should. There was experiences for families and children there. There was a service opportunity, million meal movement. We packed 360,000 meals for local shelters. The music was amazing. Big names, Matt Maher, Serra Kroger, different languages. There was traditional sacred music too that was simply beautiful. And in the exhibit hall, there was hundreds of booths, and Knights of Columbus were there, the Focus missionaries, the Sarans were there. I actually met the president of, I believe, St. Paul, and he, from the Saran apostolate there, and he knows some of you dinosaurs. St. Pete, maybe. So, there's rosaries, there's Bibles. There were so many things you could see and do in the exhibit hall. There was live music. Of course, there was confession, all different languages, perpetual adoration. And then just to wrap this up, personal highlights for me and my husband were probably, like I said, the kickoff of the event with the Eucharistic procession into the stadium with all those pilgrims that have traveled so far was a huge highlight. Then another one was, there was a Eucharistic procession through the streets in Indianapolis. And according to my research, it said 50,000 people attended that. That's the largest one we've had in over 50 years in our country. And it was really hot that day. And it didn't stop these Catholics. Everybody was out. And it was, again, just hard to put into words, seeing all those religious and laity carrying Jesus through the streets, and the silence and the reverence and the unity. It was just beautiful. It was a glimpse of heaven. And I think I'm almost done here, folks. So where do we go from here? Well, so in 2025, they plan to walk with Jesus in 2025, pick up where they left off in Indianapolis, and walk to LA and gather and celebrate the Feast of Corpus Christi and thank God for the graces of the National Eucharistic Revival. The next National Eucharistic Congress is slated for Atlanta in June 20th and 21st of 25. In conclusion, we are all sent out on mission to evangelize, and we hear this at the conclusion of every Mass. Go and announce the gospel of the Lord, or go in peace, glorifying the Lord by your life, challenging us to take the mysteries of the Mass and the nourishment of the Eucharist out to the world. And that's what we're all challenged to do. And you also received the sheet, Walk with One. So we received these, those who attended, and I thought I'd make a copy for all of you. We all know people in our lives who maybe aren't believing it's the real presence, or they're not going to Mass regularly. We all have someone in our lives, at least one. So I do encourage you to read through this, take it home, pray on it, think about someone that you could help, get back into the church and set their hearts on fire for our faith, which is such a gift. And I don't think we have time for questions. I'm sorry if I went a little too long, but if you want to talk to me afterwards, feel free. Excuse me. I also have some books. This one, it's called the 10th National Eucharistic Congress. It basically was a good outline. It shows all the speakers, all the musicians. If you want to peek through it, if you just take 1 minute to look through this, you'll really get a good idea of what that was like in more detail. And then there's some other great books that we got complimentary for attending about the Eucharist here. So thank you so much.